Hello, everyone. Those who have joined just now, we'll be starting our session by 4:04, and we'll be recording this session for the sharing purpose. And also, do let us know in the poll uh, who is in the room today, from which sector you are in, which profile you are in. Okay. Good evening, everyone. It's so nice to have so many people right now, and the count is still increasing. Do let us know in the polls and quizzes which role do you handle in your organization. I'm Nikita from Involve, and we are so glad to have you all today. So today we are here to celebrate half a decade of national education policy, which has reshaped the way we imagine education in this country. And today what we are going to discuss is something actually not new, especially the idea of student agency. It has been passed down to us through our educational philosophies over a centuries. Rabindranath Tagore has talked about school as a places of joy, learning by nature, creativity, dialogue. Mahatma Gandhi's Nai Talim has taken the student at the center of the learning. He has talked about learning by doing, learning rooted in the real life and driven by purpose. J. Krishnamurthy has talked about independent thinking, where student has right to choose, to reflect, and to question their own path. And when we read NEP, it echoes of all of this vision. School has meant to be the places where learning is driven by experience, inquiry driven, dialogue based, and where students are not just the passive recipient of the information, but also the active participants of the knowledge. And this has been the heart of Involve at work. From the last 7 years, we have been working to create such spaces through student leadership, innovation, and community as the center to create student as the active participants of their learning. And today, we are not just going to reflect about the policy. It would also be a conversation to unpack what it is going to make student agency alive in every classroom. And to do this, we are going to be there where the learning happens in the classroom. So stay tuned till the end. And now I would like to invite Bharti, our moderator for the first segment, who is also the M&E manager at Involve, to take us and deep dive into the ground realities and the experiences of the students and the teacher. Bharti, over to you.
Thank you so much, Nikita, and thank you for setting this ground very strong. And now we have Kiran ma'am and Ware said with us. Welcome both of you. And we know that Nikita also talked about how NEP is not just about academic achievements and all, but it is going beyond that. And we have two living legends with us, Kiran ma'am, who's the founder of Riverside School, who is famously known for creating those spaces where children are taking care of their own learning, and Ware sir, who has been nationally awarded for his contribution in education. So we'll spend our next 20 minutes learning from them, knowing their experience in education and around NEP. We'll first hear from Kiran ma'am. We know that you have been creating different spaces for children where they're owning their learning and learning about life skills and all those things. And we would want to know that what are some intentional steps which you are taking to make sure that children are getting those.
Hi, thank you for the invitation. Can you hear me? Yes?
Yes, you are. Audible.
Well, what am I doing? I think the first thing that we at Riverside are doing is maybe listening a lot more, not talking so much. I think the one thing for student agency is to listen. And I think with listening, there's a beautiful relationship of trust that happens with the learner in the community. And I think with that insight, I think I was taught that lovely lesson from my children when I started the school. And I think it has been the greatest strategy for student agency to listen more and instruct less. To trust more and to direct less. So I think the stepping back rather than stepping inside is a beautiful way to show children that you believe and you trust them. I think that's the biggest thing that they want. So I would say in a very small way, if anybody wants to try to do student agency, go into a class and listen rather than shout and instruct and inform and tell. So that's one. The second thing I've actually learned very, very beautiful is that while there is a curriculum and there's a syllabus, the biggest curriculum is you. Your smile, your body language, the way you reach out to children. Children have a beautiful way of mimicking you. They might not listen to you, but they will always mimic you. And I think when you show what agency looks like, they will imitate those same, behaviors and body language, etc. So I think you are a great role model to teach agency. When teachers walk into the class bored or listless or not interested, children will pick that up as well. Then you cannot tell children, oh, you must be agents, you must be brave, you must have a voice. If we keep telling them, you keep quiet, and we keep saying, no, ye syllabus se question nahi hai, syllabus ka question pucho. If we keep doing that, it's less likely that children will have agency. And I think the third is do more and talk less. So I think even the doing, children love having senses of accomplishment. Small things like what is today going to look like? How should we put the diary? How should we do the arrangement in the class? Simple things give children the opportunity to exercise their agency. And if we do that every day for 15 years, then it's more likely that children will graduate believing they can make the world a beautiful place. Yeah, so those are small lessons that I have learned.
Thank you so much, Kiran ma'am. You are very beautifully that small things that you are doing for creating those spaces for children. I think we'll go to next Ware sir. Ware sir, first आपके खूब स्वागत है. आपसे हम जानना चाहेंगे कि आपने जैसे वाली को ट्रांसफॉर्म किया या आप अभी जहाँ पे हैं आपसे ट्रांसफॉर्म कर पाए. So उसमें आप बच्चों के रोल को कैसे देख पाते हैं? बच्चों का क्या पार्टिसिपेशन है?
नमस्ते. हेलो
सर, आपकी आवाज आ रही है. नमस्ते सर.
जी. बच्चों का पार्टिसिपेशन हम बहुत ज्यादा लेते हैं. बच्चों को वो सोचने का और उनका निर्णय बताने का पूरा अधिकार देते हैं हम लोग. और जैसे कि आप वावलेवाड़ी स्कूल के बारे में बोल रहे थे, तो वहाँ का जो स्ट्रक्चर है वो एक अलग टाइप का स्ट्रक्चर है. बहुत बार लोग ऐसा बोलते हैं कि ये स्ट्रक्चर आपने कहीं देखा है या कहीं से कॉपी किया है, तो ऐसी बात नहीं है। मैंने बच्चों को बोला था कि हमको स्कूल बनानी है, तो आप बता सकते हैं कि हमको किस टाइप की स्कूल चाहिए। तो बच्चों ने जो भी इनपुट्स दिए थे मुझे कि बच्चे ऐसे बोले थे कि अ, हमको जब क्लास में बैठेंगे तो बाहर का दिखाई देना चाहिए। तो कांच के दीवारें हो गई। बच्चे ने बोला था कि हम कहीं से भी बाहर निकल सकते हैं, ऐसा होना चाहिए। तो चारों तरफ से स्लाइडिंग हो गया। अ, उसके बाद ये बोला था कि एक हम पेड़ के नीचे बैठ के जिस टाइप की छाव हमको मिलती है उस टाइप का क्लास में वातावरण होना चाहिए। तो हमने डबल लेयर्ड रूफ की थी। क्लासरूम से एक दूसरे से चिपक के ना हो, बीच में जगह होनी चाहिए और पेड़ पौधे होने चाहिए, तो हमने वैसा किया था। तो बहुत सारी चीजें हम डे टू डे रूटीन कैसा होना चाहिए, ये बात भी बच्चों से सुनते हैं। मुझे ऐसा लगता है ना कि उनके पास बहुत सारे मैसेज होते हैं हमें देने के लिए, मगर हमारा रिसीवर कैसा है ये बात है। और रिसीवर अगर अच्छा होगा तो हम बहुत बच्चों से बहुत ज्यादा हम सीख सकते हैं। और आगे जाके मैं ये भी हमेशा बोलता हूँ कि हम हमें ऐसा लगता है कि हम बच्चों को सिखाते हैं, मगर ये बात ऐसी नहीं है। अगर उनको थोड़ा सा फ्रीडम मिले तो हमारे जैसे कई टीचर वो तैयार कर सकते हैं। तो मुझे मुझे ऐसा लगता है ना कि हम बहुत अच्छे लेवल पे बच्चों को एक एक्सपोजर देते हैं, उनकी बात सुनते हैं, उनको वो सारी मतलब वो सारा अधिकार देते हैं कि जिसके ऊपर वो काम कर सके अच्छी तरह से। जस्ट मिनट। थैंक यू। तो इस तरह से और जो भी काम करते हैं हम स्कूल में, जैसे क्लीनलीनेस का काम हो, तो हमारे बच्चों के ग्रुप्स होते हैं। हम स्कूल का काम नहीं करते, हम बच्चों का जीवन तैयार करते हैं, या फिर उसमें हम अ, अ, उसके अंदर जो भी इथिक्स मॉरल्स होने चाहिए वो काम हम बच्चों के साथ मिलके करते हैं, और बच्चे साथ होते हैं इस सारी चीज़ों में। एक स्कूल कल्चर बना सकते हैं बच्चों को साथ में लेके। और स्कूल कल्चर एक ऐसी चीज़ है कि एक टीचर के साथ पैरेलली वो स्टूडेंट्स को अ, मतलब तैयार करते हैं स्टूडेंट्स को स्कूल कल्चर। तो ये स्कूल कल्चर तैयार करने के लिए बच्चों का साथ होना बहुत जरूरी होता है, और वो साथ हम बच्चों का लेते हैं हमेशा के लिए। ऐसा एक एक्टिवली पार्टिसिपेशन होता है बच्चों का हमारे साथ उधर। थैंक यू।
थैंक यू सो मच सर। आई थिंक वारे गुरुजी ने भी वही बात बोली जो कि किरण मैम ने बोली, दैट हाउ वी कैन कीप सारा का सारा सेंटर बच्चे के ऊपर, एंड बच्चे कैसे उस चीज को ओन करेंगे तो वो ज्यादा से ज्यादा सीख पाएंगे एंड विल बी ग्रोइंग, एंड उनके साथ हम ग्रो कर रहे होंगे। I think Kiran ma'am also said that how she is learning a lot of things from children, and how Bharti sir is also learning a lot of things from children. I think my next question would be to both of you, that we know that
चलिए।
We can't hear you. Wait.
and also use the mobile.
Okay, sorry for that technical glitch. So my next question to both of you, that you guys were talking about how you guys are learning so much from children and creating those spaces and all. And we know that we have to work on academic, we have to work on life skill, and there's very limited time which they are spending in school. So उस limited time में किरण मैम आपसे भी और वारे सर गुरुजी आपसे भी हम जानना चाहेंगे कि हम कैसे बैलेंस करें कि वो लाइफ स्किल्स को भी सीख रहे हैं वो अपने academic learnings को भी कर रहे हैं, and overall they are becoming a good leaders of future generation. So वो कैसे हम कर पाए?
एक चीज है कि दे नॉट अलग चीजें. लाइफ स्किल इज नॉट सेपरेट फ्रॉम करिकुलम. वो जब हम सेपरेट कर देते हैं तब सोचते हैं अरे टाइम ही किधर है. आई थिंक वो दैट अप्रोच इज आई थिंक द challenge when you have to do content and character. दोनों चीज एक ही चीज है ना. We have the heart and the mind together. So I think and I'm sure Vaisab does the same. I believe the idea is not to separate the body. I mean, the mind, the heart, and the will to work. So if we look at it as when we talk about whole child, on one hand we're saying whole child, and then we say नहीं नहीं ये अभी time नहीं है इसके लिए करते हैं. So I believe when you're looking at an approach to education or learning that is really believing that there's a blend, that in every learning moment there is skills and character. A learning moment is not devoid of character or skills. You cannot say नहीं ये quadratic equation में skills नहीं है या character नहीं है. So if one can see the beautiful amalgamation of all of these, then separate नहीं हो जाता है. Then वही दिन में वही घंटे में you can actually build a beautiful promise. I think it's a promise. You have to look at it. जो आपका जो learning moment है एक promise हो जाता है. And the promise is not separate. ये नहीं कि अच्छा अभी extra curriculum में we will be kind people. Regularly में नहीं उसमें लिए time नहीं है. So in every learning, so don't look at it as subjects. It's a learning opportunity. The moment you shift it away from, okay, these are subjects and this is syllabus and that is skill, then the challenge comes कि अरे मैं कहाँ पे timetable करूँ उसको. But the moment you look at it as really an opportunity that every learning moment has the possibility in it to teach, to make it a moment for content and character. I mean, if you just look at it as very simply things, then boss time ही time है. Then will time का problem क्या है? Time ही time है. 15 साल है हमारे पास. I mean, that's a long moment to be able to build both. So I don't see it as a challenge. It is just the way we have to approach it, that we're not teaching subjects, we are reaching our children. I think if you just shift that, then there is lots of time.
Thank you, Kiran ma'am. And I'll always remember that this is something you call promise. So I'll make sure that I'm promising my audience. Ware sir, आपका क्या सोचना है इस बारे में?
मैं किरण मैम के साथ बिल्कुल एग्री हूँ कि ऐसे ही होता है. और मैं अभी उन्होंने स्पष्ट किया है तो मैं थोड़े से एग्जांपल बता के ये बात रखता हूँ. हमारे एजुकेशन मिनिस्टर है, उन्होंने मुझे पूछा था कि एनईपी आपके स्कूल में आपने कैसे इम्प्लीमेंट की है या नहीं की है. तो मैंने बोला कि अगर स्कूल है तो एनईपी होना ही चाहिए, अगर एनईपी नहीं है तो ये स्कूल ही नहीं है. तो एक चीज है वो. दूसरा एक है कि हम एक सब्जेक्ट फ्रेंड स्कीम बच्चों के लिए चलाते हैं स्कूल में, कि टीचर के लिए पैरेलली काम करता है ये सब्जेक्ट फ्रेंड. और बच्चों में से होता है थोड़ा सा यंगर स्टूडेंट्स होता है, और वो बाकी बच्चों को अगर उनके कुछ अनक्लियर कंसेप्ट है तो वो बच्चे उनसे पूछते हैं. डायरेक्टली टीचर के पास आने में थोड़ा सा प्रॉब्लम लगता है बच्चों को, तो वो अपने फ्रेंड्स से उनसे पूछते हैं और वो बताते हैं उनको. अगर हम अलग से सोचते हैं कि 21st सेंचुरी स्किल्स या फिर लाइफ स्किल्स अलग है, तो अगर ये हमारा एक ही प्रोजेक्ट देखे या एक ही एक्टिविटी देखे स्कूल की, तो इसमें सारे 21st सेंचुरी स्किल्स है, सारे लाइफ स्किल्स है. कम्युनिकेशन स्किल अच्छा होता है, ऐसा दोनों साइड से कॉन्फिडेंस बिल्ड होता है, दोनों साइड से कंपेशन है, इसलिए तो एक बच्चा दूसरे बच्चों को पढ़ा रहा है. क्रिटिकल थिंकिंग चलता है, कोई स्टूडेंट आके कुछ भी क्वेश्चन पूछ सकता है, तो ये रेडी रहते हैं हमेशा. कोलैबोरेटिव ही काम है ये सारा. अगर इस तरह से काम करेंगे, हमारा स्कूल अभी शिफ्ट हो गया है कंपटीशन मोड से कोलैबोरेटिव मोड की तरफ, तो ये इनबिल्ट ही होता है. हर एक हमारा जो प्रोजेक्ट होता है स्कूल का या एक्टिविटी होती है स्कूल की, तो इसमें सब कुछ इनबिल्ट होता है. पढ़ने पढ़ाने का काम भी ऐसा ही है। एक अलग प्रोजेक्ट में यहाँ का आपको बताता हूँ, उसका एग्जांपल देता हूँ कि हमारे यहाँ हम लोग अ, हमारे यहाँ की जो हम नाना बोलते हैं उनको, उन्होंने अपनी जमीन स्कूल के लिए दे दी है। तो वहाँ हम लोग एग्री मीडियम स्कूल नाम का एक प्रोजेक्ट चलाते हैं। एग्री मीडियम स्कूल मतलब ये है कि बच्चे वहाँ खेती सीखने नहीं जाते, या फिर ये नहीं है उसका मोटो कि अगर वो नहीं पढ़ेगा तो खेती करके अपना जीवन चला, ये नहीं है। जैसे उर्दू मीडियम स्कूल, इंग्लिश मीडियम स्कूल, मतलब इंग्लिश पढ़ने नहीं जाते बच्चे वहाँ, इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज से वो ज्ञान लेते हैं। तो एग्री मीडियम स्कूल मतलब खेती में काम करते करते वो पूरा सीख जाते हैं, और जो क्लास में बच्चे बैठते हैं उनसे भी ज्यादा अच्छी तरह से सीखते हैं। तो इस टाइप का इंटीग्रेशन अगर हम करते हैं या सोचते हैं कोई प्रोजेक्ट बनाते टाइम या इस तरह से, तो जैसे मैम किरण मैम बोल रहे थे कि टाइम ही टाइम है, तो मैं उससे भी एग्री हूँ। हमारे पास बहुत टाइम है, 150 स्टूडेंट है यहाँ, और उनके लिए मैं अकेला टीचर हूँ, फ्रॉम फर्स्ट टू एट, और फिर भी मेरे पास बहुत टाइम है। तो तो इस तरह से हम लोग सोचते हैं और काम करते हैं, और यही असली तरीका होता है, ये नेचुरल तरीका है ये स्कूल में काम करने का। टाइम टेबल और हमारा जो एनुअल प्लानिंग वगैरह होता है, ये बस हर्डल है ये बच्चों के एजुकेशन में। तो इस तरह से करते हैं हम लोग भी स्कूल में अपने।
Thank you, Ware sir. And I feel that I have met two great teachers who's creating future leaders. And I have noted down so many points. And I think हमारी audience को भी बहुत सारी चीज़ें मिली हैं जो वो आप लोगों से सीखेंगे and अपने schools में organizations में लेके जाएंगे. Thank you so much once again, Kiran ma'am and Ware sir, आपके time के लिए. And our next session will be led by Ayush. Handing over to Ayush. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye, everybody. Thank you for everything. Bye bye, sir. बहुत अच्छा हुआ मिले आपके. Bye bye.
आपको अहमदाबाद में मिला था मैम मैं।
हाँ जी, मेरे को फिर से अपन मिलेंगे. Bye bye.
जी जी जी, थैंक
Oh my God. What a powerful start to today's conversation. I still getting goosebumps. I'm constantly nodding my head and a constant smile on my face. It was truly, truly powerful. Thank you so much, Bharti, and heartily thank you, Kiran ma'am and Ware sir. आपने हमसे share किया कि कैसे educators are reimagining and transforming learning for students and also advocating for student agency, right? Listening to these great educators truly set the stage for our next segment. As we all know that our 5 year of national education policy is completed, and as Vare sir and Kiran ma'am was also saying that the loudest and the most important voice to listen in this journey must be those of students, right? And that's exactly what this segment is all about. We will get to know more about how national education policy talks and advocate about choices, leadership, and ownership of students, but through the eyes of students. So, without any further ado, सबसे पहले मैं आप लोग से मिलाना चाहूंगा काजल से. काजल एक क्लास 5th की स्टूडेंट है और शिक्षा मित्र है संकल्प एक प्रयास छत्तीसगढ़ से, जहां वो अपने दोस्तों को लैंग्वेज और मैथ्स पढ़ाती है इन अ पीयर लर्निंग एनवायरनमेंट आफ्टर स्कूल्स में. Her story beautifully illustrates that how national education policy emphasizes on the choice of a student in the classroom and how it should look like. तो आज काजल से हम सुनेंगे और वो बताएंगी कि उन्होंने क्यों शिक्षा मित्र बनने का चयन किया, क्या उनको चैलेंजेस देखने मिले और उन्होंने क्या सीखा इस जर्नी से. हाय किरण, आप हैं यहाँ पे? काजल हाय.
शायद ना.
दूसरे को बोल.
ओके, आई थिंक काजल का शायद नेटवर्क थोड़ा सा एरर हो रहा था, कोई बात नहीं. सो वी विल टेक दिस लेटर. तो उसके बाद हमारे सेकंड जो स्टूडेंट है वो है शाहिद, जो कि एक स्टूडेंट एंटरप्रेन्योर है. शाहिद उद्यम लर्निंग फाउंडेशन के SBIC प्रोग्राम यानी कि सोसाइटल बिजनेस इनोवेशन चैलेंज का पार्ट है. जैसे कि NEP एम्फेसाइज करता है कि लीडरशिप स्किल्स, कैसे बच्चों में लाया जाए और कैसे उस लीडरशिप को यूटिलाइज किया जाए और कैसे उसको रियल लाइफ चैलेंजेस के साथ देखा जाए, राइट? तो शाहिद की स्टोरी विल टेक अस थ्रू व्हाट ऑथेंटिक लीडरशिप एंड डिटर्मिनेशन लुक लाइक इन फॉर आवर यंगर स्टूडेंट, एंड कैसे शाहिद एंड उनकी टीम ने अपने प्रोडक्ट्स के पे काम किया, कैसे चैलेंजेस उनको फेस किया, कैसे उन्होंने लीडरशिप और कोलैबोरेशन से अपने प्रोडक्ट्स को आगे बढ़ाया और चैलेंजेस फेस किया, और कैसे और उनका लीडरशिप का उनके लिए मतलब क्या है। तो हाय शाहिद, कैसे हैं आप?
Hello, sir. I am fine.
सर मैं काजल।
काजल, 2 मिनट रुकिए आप, ठीक है? हम आपके पास आएंगे अभी। शाहिद भैया अपनी स्टोरीज बता रहे हैं, फिर हम आपके पास आए।
सर
हाँ, ठीक है, ठीक है, ठीक है, ओके, ठीक है काजल। हाँ शाहिद, आप बताइए
जी
हमें आपकी
सर।
स्टोरी कैसे रही, एसबीआईसी में आपकी स्टोरी कैसे रही, कैसे आपने स्टूडेंट
तो
लीडरशिप पे काम किया और कैसे अपने ग्रुप के साथ सारे चैलेंजेस को ओवरकम करके आप अपने प्रोडक्ट को मार्केट पे ले आए, और क्या आपकी स्टोरी रही?
okay, sir. So, good afternoon, all of you. Myself Shahid. I am from Government Higher Secondary School, तुमड़ा भोपाल। सबसे पहले मैं आप सभी को धन्यवाद कहना चाहता हूँ क्योंकि आपने मुझे इस मंच पर बोलने का मौका दिया। आज मैंने अपनी एसबीआईसी तेजस्वी प्रोग्राम की पूरी जर्नी के बारे में आप सबको बताने वाला हूँ। जैसा कि आप सभी जानते हैं, तेजस्वी एसबीआईसी जैसे प्रोग्राम बच्चों के टैलेंट को पहचानने का एक बहुत अच्छा प्लेटफॉर्म है और यह स्टूडेंट्स को अपने एक छोटे से आइडिया को बिजनेस बनाने तक के सफर को तय करने में उनकी हेल्प करता है। और ऐसे प्रोग्राम के हमें और हमारे देश को बहुत जरूरत है। हमारी टीम में कई सारे मेंबर्स थे, लेकिन मुझे ही अपनी टीम का लीडर क्यों बनाया गया? आप सभी के मन में सवाल आया होगा। अ, ये- इसलिए बताया गया, मुझे अपनी टीम का लीडर इसलिए बनाया गया क्योंकि हमने यह तय किया था कि जो भी हमारी टीम का मेंबर है वह हमारी टीम को अच्छे से संभाल सकता है और जो हमारे प्रोडक्ट है उसके बारे में सबसे ज्यादा जानकारी किसे है। तो जब हमने ये सब चीजें जानना शुरू किया तो मेरी पूरी टीम को लगा कि यह सब मैं ही अच्छे से कर सकता हूँ। अ, और तब से मुझे अपनी टीम का सबने लीडर बना दिया। तो यहीं से मेरी एसबीआईसी प्रोग्राम की स्टोरी स्टार्ट होती है। जब मैंने अपनी टीम का लीडर बना था तो शुरू शुरू में मुझे बहुत शुरू शुरू में मुझे कुछ समझ में नहीं आ रहा था। और मेरे सामने कई सारी समस्याएं थी जिन्हें हल करने के लिए मैंने अपने टीममेट्स के साथ प्लान बनाना शुरू किया। जैसे तैसे करके हमने अपने प्रोजेक्ट को बनाकर तैयार कर लिया, लेकिन फिर भी हमारे सामने एक समस्या थी कि हम हमारे प्रोडक्ट को मार्केट में कैसे लॉन्च करें, क्योंकि मार्केट में तो कई सारे प्रोडक्ट हैं जो हमारे प्रोडक्ट जैसे थे। लेकिन इन सब चीजों के बावजूद भी हम अपने प्रोडक्ट को कैसे मार्केट में उतारे, तो हमने अपने प्रोडक्ट को मार्केट में उतारने से पहले उसकी मार्केटिंग की। और इंटरनेट का हमें उसमें सबसे ज्यादा मदद मिली। इस इंटरनेट से हमने ऑनलाइन अपने प्रोडक्ट की मार्केटिंग की और अपने आइडिया को और अपने बिजनेस को मतलब हमारा जो प्रोडक्ट था उसको लोगों तक पहुंचाया, जिससे हमारी बिक्री भी अच्छी हुई। तेजस्वी एसबीआईसी प्रोग्राम का मेरा अनुभव बहुत ही अच्छा रहा। मैंने इस प्रोग्राम की मदद से अपने आप को लोगों के बीच प्रेजेंट कैसे किया जाता है और एक एज ए लीडर अपनी टीम को संभाला कैसे जाता है ये सीखा। एंड मैं तेजस्वी एसबीआईसी की पूरी टीम को धन्यवाद कहना चाहता हूँ और आयुष सर, ममता मैम, पूजा मैम और अपनी क्लास टीचर डॉक्टर फिरोजा खान मैम को धन्यवाद कहना चाहता हूँ, क्योंकि इनका अगर मुझे सपोर्ट नहीं होता, अगर ये मेरा मार्गदर्शन नहीं करते, तो शायद मैं इतना आगे कभी जा ही नहीं पाता। एंड आप सभी को भी थैंक यू जो आपने मेरी स्टोरी सुनी। धन्यवाद।
बहुत बहुत खूबसूरत शाहिद, बहुत अच्छा आपने बताया, एक्सप्लेन किया। और मुझे वाकई लगता है कि आप में काफी लीडरशिप क्वालिटी और डिटर्मिनेशन है, क्योंकि
थैंक यू सर।
आपकी तबीयत भी खराब है अभी और आप अलग अलग चीजों में फंसे हुए हैं, स्टिल यू आर हियर एंड शेयरिंग योर स्टोरी। दैट रियली शो करता है कि आप में डिटर्मिनेशन और लीडरशिप क्वालिटी है। थैंक यू सो मच शाहिद, आपका जुड़ने का और हमारे
थैंक यू
बताने
सर।
का कि आपकी जर्नी कैसे रही और कैसे
ओके
लीडरशिप को
सर।
आपने देखा। थैंक यू सो मच। हाँ,
ओके
तो
सर,
हम
थैंक यू।
हम वापस आते हैं काजल की स्टोरी पे। काजल, आप हमारे साथ हैं अभी? आप हैं यहाँ पे? हाय काजल, कैसे हो आप?
जी सर।
कैसे हो आप?
अच्छी हूँ सर, आप कैसे?
मैं
अच्छी
बढ़िया
हूँ
हूँ।
सर।
और वहाँ पे मौसम कैसा है? बारिश हो रही है कि गर्मी है?
बारिश हो रही है।
अच्छा, बारिश हो रही है। हाँ, तो काजल, जैसे हमने आपके बारे में बताया ना, आप 5th क्लास से है, आप शिक्षा मित्र है। तो आप हमें बताएंगे कि आपने शिक्षा मित्र क्यों बनना चुना, और शिक्षा मित्र जैसे आप बने तो आपने अपने सहपाठियों का कैसे पढ़ाया, क्या क्या चुनौतियों का सामना करना मिला, और और क्या आपको सीख मिली एज ए स्टूडेंट लीडर, एज ए शिक्षा मित्र? बताइए काजल।
ए- सर मैं इंट्रोडक्शन से चालू करना चाहती हूँ।
हाँ, कोई बात, जहाँ से आपको लगे सही।
नमस्ते सर, मेरा नाम काजल मिश्राम है। मैं क्लास 5 में पढ़ती हूँ। मैं सिकोना सेंटर की छात्रा हूँ। मैं एक कक्षा शिक्षा मित्र हूँ। और जब भी मैं अपने दीदी लोगों को पढ़ाते हुए देखती हूँ तो मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगता है। और मैं भी अपने छोटे से भाई बहनों को पढ़ाना चाहती थी, इसलिए मुझे दीदियों ने मुझे अपना शिक्षा मित्र चुना और मौका दिया।
वाह, बहुत अच्छा, बहुत अच्छा। आप अपनी जो सहपाठी को पढ़ाते थे, तब आपको कुछ चैलेंजेस मिले, चुनौतियां मिली कि बच्चे आपसे नहीं पढ़ रहे हैं, और बच्चे कुछ और पढ़ना चाहते हैं और आप और कुछ पढ़ा रही है, या टीएलएम नहीं है ना, टीचर जो मटेरियल देते हैं आपको वो नहीं है, तो आपने क्या किया उस टाइम पे?
समझ। जी सर।
हाँ, मैं बोल रहा हूँ कि जब आप बच्चे आपसे पढ़ते नहीं थे, कभी ऐसा हुआ कि आप बड़ा पढ़ाना चाहते हैं और बच्चे पढ़ नहीं रहे हैं, तो आपने क्या किया उस टाइम?
जब उन लोग मेरे बात नहीं मानते थे तो मैंने अपने टीचर्स की मदद मांगी और एक्टिविटी के माध्यम से उन लोगों को अपनी ओर आकर्षित करके उन लोगों को पढ़ाया।
अरे वाह, क्या बात है। आपने आपने जो एक्टिविटी है आपने खुद बनाई कि टीचर की मदद ली?
मैं खुद।
आप खुद बनाते थे? अच्छा, आपने अपने सहपाठियों के हेल्प ली बनाते टाइम, कि आपने खुद से ही शुरू से बनाया?
एक्टिविटी
हाँ, एक्टिविटी।
मदद ली हूँ।
अच्छा, तो आपको शिक्षा मित्र बनने में क्या सबसे तीन सबसे अच्छी बात क्या लगती है, कि क्या मुझे अच्छा लगता है एज ए एज आप एक शिक्षा मित्र है, तो आपको क्या अच्छा लगता है शिक्षा मित्र बन के?
मुझे पढ़ाने में और पढ़ने में, एक्टिविटी कराने में और टीएलएम बनाने में बहुत अच्छा लगता है।
वाह वाह, बहुत बहुत अच्छा काजल, बहुत बहुत थैंक यू आपका, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आपका आने का। मुझे पता है आप स्कूल में हैं और अभी यहाँ पे आई है। बहुत, मैं आपसे पक्का मिलूंगा और आपसे खूब सारी बातें करूंगा, और हम साथ में टीएलएम करेंगे, ठीक है? हम साथ में एक्टिविटी कराएंगे।
जी सर।
थैंक यू काजल, थैंक यू सो मच आपका आने का।
सर।
Yeah, and finally, we have someone who initiative transformation, and they have created a very new thing from entirely scratch. So we have Dhaval from class 8. She is from Harapanahalli HPS school. वो इन्वॉल्व लर्निंग सोल्यूशन फाउंडेशन की एक पीयर लर्निंग इनिशिएटिव है जिसका नाम है मार्गदर्शी प्रोग्राम, उनका पार्ट है। धवल और उनके क्लासमेट ने कुछ बहुत ही नया किया है, जो कि अक्सर टीचर एंड प्रिंसिपल भी करने से हेजिटेट करते हैं। To be in precise, if I say, they have organized a first student-led PTM in her classroom or in her school. From planning to analyzing and to solving the challenges and bridging the gap between school and community, Dhaval's story is a testimony of what happens when student really own a thing. So, hi Dhaval, कैसे हो आप? हेलो धवल, मेरी आवाज आ रही है धवल आपको? धवल आप म्यूट में हो, हाँ आप म्यूट में हो धवल, आप अनम्यूट कर सकते हो, वहां पे एक माइक बना होगा उसमें दबा दीजिए, वो लाल है अभी। एक बार और ट्राई करो, अभी भी आप म्यूट में हो, अभी आप आपकी आवाज नहीं आएगी हमें। देखो वहां पे एक माइक बना होगा और उसमें ऐसा लाल डायगनली स्लैश है, ऐसा कुछ बना होगा, उसको आप टैप कीजिए, उसको से टैप कीजिए। आ, नहीं हुआ अभी भी आपको? ओके ओके। आ, धवल आप ट्राई कर रहे हैं? आपका स्क्रीन आ रही है ऐसे, नॉट मतलब ऐसे मुंडी लगी, अगर आ रही होगी तो मैं बताता हूँ क्या करना है फिर से। अच्छा, आई गेस शी विल फिगर इट आउट बिकॉज बच्चे कैन फिगर इट आउट ऑल दीज थिंग्स, दे हैव मोर एक्सपर्टीज देन अस। तब तक शाहिद आप हैं यहाँ पे?
जी सर।
शाहिद अभी आप कौन सी क्लास में?
12th स्टार्ट हुआ है सर।
12th स्टार्ट हुआ है, अपने सब्जेक्ट के लिए कॉमर्स?
जी सर।
कैसा लग रहा है आपको कॉमर्स में आके, और क्या आपने जो सीख मिली है आपको 11th से और अभी नए क्लास में है, कैसा लग रहा है आपको?
जी सर, अभी तो बिल्कुल नया नया था सब कुछ, मतलब जो 11th में था उससे बिल्कुल चेंज ही हो गया था सब। जो चीज हमने पहले बिजनेस से पढ़ी, पहले अकाउंट में पढ़ी थी, अब वही चीज हम बिजनेस से पढ़ रहे हैं। थोड़ा सा चेंज है बट बाकी अच्छा है।
अरे वाह बढ़िया है। तो जैसे हम बात करते हैं ना कि हमें जो हम सीखते हैं, जो हम एजुकेशन में क्लासरूम में सीखते हैं, वो
जी
हमें
सर।
रियल लाइफ से कनेक्शन होना चाहिए, है ना, हम ऐसी बात करते हैं। तो आपको
जी
लगता है कि अगर जो हम सीख रहे हैं, जैसे आप अभी स्कूल में सीख रहे हैं कॉमर्स में, जो भी चीजें होती है, अलग अकाउंटिंग होती है ना,
जी
अलग
सर।
अलग तरह की चीजें होती है, तो आपको लगता है वो अपने आपके अभी रोजमर्रा के काम में काफी काम आ रहा है?
जी सर, आ सकते हैं ना।
कैसे काम आ रहा है अभी, थोड़ा कुछ एक एग्जांपल देके बताएंगे? जैसे मुझे तो
जैसे
पर्सनल थोड़ी बहुत पता है, बट आप अगर आप
जी
कंफर्टेबल।
जी जी, जैसे सर जैसे मेरी शॉप है, तो उसमें ही मुझे कई सारे, जैसे अकाउंटेंसी है तो उसमें जो हमारे वो होते हैं प्रैक्टिकल, तो वो प्रैक्टिकल हम वहाँ करते हैं, तो वो हमें यहाँ भी काम आ सकते हैं। जैसे अगर हम अपने बिजनेस का अकाउंट बनाए, तो उसकी भी हमें आना चाहिए ना, इसलिए तो वो बहुत काम की चीज़ है। और जैसे वो इकोनॉमिक्स हम पढ़ते हैं, तो इकोनॉमिक्स में ज़्यादातर चीज़ें ऐसी है जो हमें रोज़मर्रा में ही काम आती है।
हम्म, ये तो है, मतलब सारे सब्जेक्ट्स पहले बोलते थे ना कि सिर्फ मैथ्स और साइंस ही है ऐसे सब्जेक्ट्स जो काफी बच्चों को करना चाहिए, बट मुझे लगता है कि हम जैसे कॉमर्स के हैं और दूसरे सब्जेक्ट्स हैं, इनका सबका सहयोग बहुत रियल लाइफ में काफी है ना,
जी
इसमें अलग
सर।
अलग। बढ़िया है
जी
आपके।
सर।
हाँ हाँ, चलो फिर काजल आप है यहाँ पे?
हाँ सर। यस सर।
काजल, काजल आपका फेवरेट सब्जेक्ट कौन सा है, आपको फेवरेट सब्जेक्ट जो आप पढ़ाने में आपको बहुत मजा आता है?
मुझे गणित।
गणित? अरे क्या बात है यार, मुझे भी गणित सिखाओगे? मैं थोड़ा तो कमजोर हूँ गणित में।
यस सर।
अच्छा, आपका फेवरेट पार्ट कौन सा है गणित का? विषम, पाठ, चैप्टर कुछ है आपका? गुणा भाग, घट
जोड़ना
घटाव जोड़, जोड़ना घटाना। आपके पास अभी कुछ एक्टिविटी है करके दिखाने के लिए? आपके पास कुछ है अभी करके दिखाने के लिए, बता सकते हैं आप हमें? हम सब
हाँ।
साथ में करेंगे आपके, हम सब साथ में करेंगे, हाँ बताइए।
सभी लोग वीडियो ऑन करो।
इधर बैठो।
अच्छा, अभी सभी लोग तो शायद कर पाएंगे, बट आप बताओ, मैं करके बताता हूँ आपको।
मैं स्टार्ट करूं सर?
हाँ हाँ, आप स्टार्ट करो।
एक चिड़िया जंगल में रहती, चिड़िया
एक चिड़िया जंगल में
जंगल में
रहती थी।
रहती है एक। हाँ,
हाँ,
हो गया ना?
एक चिड़िया जंगल में रहती है।
हाँ,
अच्छा, तो दो भी तो रहती, एक रहती तो और भी तो रहते होंगे। अच्छा, अब मतलब इसमें क्या आएगा? इसमें गुणा आएगा, भाग आएगा, इससे क्या होगा आगे बताओ। अच्छा। अच्छा, आपके पास कोई और एक्टिविटी है?
पूरा करा ले, पूरा करा। हाँ,
और कौन
यही
सी
वाला है।
एक्टिविटी आपके पास? अच्छा, यही वाला है। चलिए, बढ़िया बढ़िया। अच्छा, अंग्रेजी, सॉरी, गणित के अलावा और कुछ? अच्छा, कुछ और मजा नहीं आता? गणित बहुत मजा आता है ना आपको? अच्छा, आपके ग्रुप में कौन कौन है? कौन कौन है
पूरा
आपके ग्रुप में?
सर, मैं पूरा करा रही हूँ।
अच्छा, हाँ, पूरा कराओ। हाँ, वही बोला ना, आगे तो कुछ होगा।
हम्म। जंगल में रहती है एक चिड़िया, जंगल में रहती है एक चिड़िया, तीन आई फूल से पता नहीं किधर से, तीन आई फूल से पता नहीं किधर से। अब बोलो कितनी चिड़िया? बताओ ना सर।
मुझे लगता है 5 चिड़िया।
नहीं सर,
तो
गलत।
कितनी चिड़िया?
पहले एक पहले एक चिड़िया थी,
हाँ
उसके बाद तीन आई फूल से।
हाँ।
अब बोलो कितनी चिड़िया?
अच्छा,
एक।
4 चिड़िया। एक, दो,
हाँ,
3, 4। मुझे तो पता नहीं चला कि कितनी थी, 5। मुझे लगा 5 होंगी, बट 4 है। ठीक है, ठीक है, ठीक है।
जंगल में रहती हैं चार चिड़िया, जंगल में रहती हैं चार चिड़िया, दो गई फूल से पता नहीं किधर से, दो गई फूल से पता नहीं किधर से। अब बोलो कितनी चिड़िया बची?
6।
9।
अच्छा, ओ, 2। अच्छा, वो पहले 4, 2 उड़ गई, अब 2 बची। ठीक है, ठीक है, ठीक है।
सहपाठियों को।
वाह यार, आप तो बहुत अच्छा पढ़ाते हो यार। आप और आगे जाके और शिक्षा मित्र को बताना चाहेंगे कि क्या मतलब शिक्षा मित्र बनना चाहिए कि नहीं? आपने सहपाठी को बताएंगी क्या? अगर आपको एक मैसेज देने बोले कि क्यों बनना चाहिए शिक्षा मित्र, तो आप क्या बताएंगे लोगों को, या अपने सहपाठी को, कि क्यों बनना चाहिए?
क्यों बनना चाहिए?
हाँ, मगर मैं एक शिक्षा मित्र बनना चाहूँ, बट मैं डर रहा हूँ कि शिक्षा मित्र क्यों बनना है, मुझे मुझे डर लगता है।
है, आत्मविश्वास में वृद्धि होती है।
आत्मविश्वास में वृद्धि होती है?
हाँ।
ओ, आपके अंदर आत्मविश्वास है बहुत?
हाँ।
अरे वाह, क्या बात है! आपसे सही में बात करके मुझे बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है, काजल।
थैंक यू सर।
ओके। ठीक है। थैंक यू सो मच काजल, थैंक यू सो मच। आपसे मैं आके पक्का मिलूंगा, और हम खूब सारी टीएलएम्स करेंगे और सारी एक्टिविटीज करेंगे।
जरूर आना सर।
हाँ हाँ, पक्का पक्का। आई गेस थोड़ा सा हाँ, थोड़ा सा धवल के साथ टेक्निकल प्रॉब्लम हो रहा है। एक तो बारिश भी हो रही है यहाँ पे, और शी इज अलोन राइट नाउ, तो आई गेस वी विल गेट बैक टू हर लेटर फ्रॉम द सेगमेंट नाउ। बट really really thank you so much, Kajal and Shahid. Really thank you so much. These two young voices have shown us that the national education policy's vision of student agency isn't just a vague term. It's an outcome that is seen in student to the classroom and now in the community. And now, as we move into our third segment, we shift from the stories on the ground to the strategies at scale. It's time to ask that what will it take to bring the spirit of national education policies to every Indian classroom? To help us unpacking this, I'm excited to welcome our next moderator, Soumya Agarwal. Just in a very brief about Soumya, she is a senior Melton Fellow coach in Acumen, co-founder of the Unifly Collective, and a global education leader. With nearly a decade of experience in learning design and leadership coach, she has led her learning initiatives that has impacted over 1.5 lakh educators worldwide. With her deep experience in leadership coaching and systemic transformation, Soumya, I would like to invite you to guide a dynamic panel on talking about national education policy from policies to the action. And that's my time, everyone. Now over to you, Soumya. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ayush. And thanks so much, Kajal, for the brilliant activity that you showed. I'd like to just introduce the overall what we are going to be discussing, and then I'll introduce you all to the panel. So today, while we celebrate the national education policy itself, we've heard the student perspective, and now we just want to break down how this policy actually fared on ground. What are some of the things that we were able to do well? What were some of the things that we could have focused on better? But more importantly, that the mission continues, the mission to implement the policy well continues. So the idea will be to get the perspective from our different panelists in terms of what different actors in the system could actually do in order to have the next 5 years perform better than we've already done. And for this discussion, we have Samyak, who is the co-founder of Involve. He's also spent over a decade in this field, and I happen to know him from through entrepreneurship circles. Um, I think when I think of Involve and hence Samyak, agency really comes to mind, and I would be very interested in understanding how the student agency has unfolded through Involve's work, as well as what other actors in the system could do. So, welcome, Samyak. And also, thanks for having me here. We also have Pallavi with us, who's a partner at BCG. And apart from that, apart from working a lot in very complex systems, she uh, she writes about herself that she loves Bharatnatyam, she loves painting, crafting, which shows just the creativity, the 21st century skills that we talk about in the policy and in our work in education. So would be very interested to know from you, Pallavi, how we can actually work with complex systems, and hopefully we can break that down for our audience well. And then we have Meenakshi ma'am, who has worked a lot in policy implementation. She has set up a lot of, she's worked at a lot of different NGOs, and she's also built a citizenship movement. And after having so many decades of work, she continued on to study public policy. So her journey from action to policy will be interesting to understand how actually NEP itself can be strengthened as a policy. So we'll start today with Samyak. And Samyak, since you've worked with districts and you've worked at different levels in the education system, would really like to understand, whenever we talk about education, teacher is the first person that comes to mind. But there are so many other actors who probably are not in the classrooms but working alongside classrooms and educators, like the district education officers, the block education officers, the child development protection officers, all of these people. So, how do you think these actors have already played a role, and how can they continue to play a role in implementation of the NEP?
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much, Soumya, for having, and I think the involved team for having me as well. Uh, yeah, I am Samyak. I am one of the co-founders at Involve. A little bit about Involve. I'll start with that, and I think then I'll sort of tell a journey also on how we imagined moving from a classroom to imagining a district as a unit of change for the organization. At Involve, we very strongly believe in the power of every child. We believe that every child has potential to do many, many things, and they just need, I think, that trust, that support, that space where they can really unlock their power, where they can unlock their agency. And I think that has been the core thinking for Involve. One of the initial programs that we started with our own experience, I think me and my co-founder Devanshu, we both started during college when we were studying at IIT Madras, because we ourselves were a sort of a part of peer learning ecosystem. And from that, the idea came that how can students really work with each other and create that space for each other. So we started in 2016 almost. So yeah, almost 9 years now. And then for the first 4 to 5 years, we worked in classrooms directly, where we were understanding what it takes to really give that opportunity to students. What changes can students bring when they're given that opportunity? And when we started sort of doing that, we realized that, and when we also studied the ecosystem, when I think we met Soumya and all the other social entrepreneurs as well, we realized that the problem is massive. We're talking about 250 million school going children. We're talking about almost 125 school going children in government schools. So how do we solve for that? And we were thinking school as a unit, but I think post COVID, post a lot of interactions as well, we realized that the unit has to be something different. And that's when when we met a lot of people, our mentors and everything, we realized that district can be a very interesting unit that we can focus on. Currently, India has about 800 districts, 800 odd districts that are there. And the idea was that if we really want to solve the problem at large, solve the problem at scale, then we really need to start thinking also in that way. I think Sanjay Purohit, one of our mentors, talked about how do you design for scale instead of scaling what works. You see what works at scale. So we started imagining that, and hence our first intervention was with one of the districts in Uttar Pradesh, Sambhal, where we went. We first pitched the idea, okay, this is what we are doing, this is what we are imagining. And initially, there was a pushback. There was a pushback from different stakeholders. That, okay, how do we do that? And how many people are you all? And that's when the idea shifted from us to say, okay, involve being the implementer. How can the entire education ecosystem can be an implementer? And this is just one such shift that happened within our organization. And I think the similar shift I see in any implementation of the policy as well for NEP. The district cadre has, I think the highest authority is the district magistrate or district collector. Then comes the chief development officer. Then there are other officers at district level, district education officer, block level, cluster level. I think that 5 particular things are very, very important that we have learned through our journey of implementing the program at 6 different districts in the country. And by understanding that, okay, if we have to really shift anything from policy to action at the classroom level, what it would look like. And for us, the first thing that came is alignment. Alignment at every level, that from district to block to cluster level officials to teachers to even students, they all should have some sort of alignment based on whatever their role is in the ecosystem. So how can we ensure that that alignment happens? It could be by communicating through letters. It could be by doing some webinars. It could be by bringing all key stakeholders together and telling them, and them disseminating that information. So it could be through any ways. But I think only if the vision is common or the mission is common among all the stakeholders is where we will be able to move ahead. So I think that is the number one thing that is very, very crucial. Second is, how do you create that environment in all the stakeholders as well, where they feel comfortable in implementing, they feel a little bit of challenged as well, and they have clarity on how do we go ahead about it. I think clarity is very, very important, but at the same time, we should not also over clarify things. I have learned that as much as we are talking about student agency here, very important also is teacher agency. And teachers know a lot of things. They're amazing whenever I've seen them on ground. So how do we ensure that we say things at to a particular extent, but also give them autonomy to implement that in their own classroom, in their own process, in their own way. Third is support. How do we provide support at each level for each individual? Because I think in an organization also, I think Soumya, you're also aware that every individual who we have with us, they need some sort of mentorship. They need some sort of support because they feel stuck at times. So I think it is very important to clearly define support mechanism for each and every stakeholder. That okay, in what area, in what mechanism you will get support. Will it be a weekly support? Will it be a in-person support? Will it be an online support? Will it be sent through a document? Will it be through videos? What kind of support? So the very important is that we create clear support mechanism for each and every stakeholder. And I think after we establish that okay, we are aligned, and that this is how we have to do, there is support mechanism. I think then implementation sort of comes, and with that, I would also say motivation comes. That how do you institutionalize some motivational factors as well, where you are ensuring that each and every individual is getting motivated in their own manner, either through some recognitions, through some rewards, just saying that a great work what you have done. I think what we have read through some article, that teachers also, I would say, crave for a validation from parents. So if parents can also become a part of it, where they can come and support as well, I think that is a huge motivation for each and every stakeholder. And fifth is that whatever is being implemented on the ground, how does it go back to the policy? Right now, the policy is definitely drafted based on suggestions from grassroots organizations, stakeholders, and all the individuals. But also, when it really gets implemented, how can that feedback loop again sort of goes back to the circle? I think this is the loop. I think if we are able to establish at each level, I feel that we can really ensure step by step each and every policy action and the mandate that was given, that can really flow down on the ground. And I think one of the most important piece, apart from all these stakeholders, that I also feel is the NGO partners as well, is the CSO partners as well, where how can different nonprofits who are doing amazing work, how can they come together and also build that shared understanding? I think that these will be my few pointers.
Thanks so much, Samyak, and really shows so much of operational experience that you have. You've given us like an operational roadmap of how do you make this change on the ground. Could you also share some examples? It was very interesting when you spoke about teacher motivation, how parents could play a role. And it just took me back to this awards, these national awards that we were organizing, NCRT was organizing. And over there, the biggest question was that in a country as huge as India, how will 10 awards motivate that teacher in a village who's trying to make a change to even apply? So just any insights on how do you actually make this motivation work? What is probably the best unit of at which this award should be, awards or any other kind of motivation that we could have?
Yeah. So I think motivation has to be at multiple levels as well, and also of different kinds. What I have realized now a lot of times, that it is not just like an award that you need to give, or it is not just some monetary incentive that is important, but it is just a message. Ma'am, I visited your school. I really liked that entire piece, and I wish that I could come and see more. A motivation like a DM, let's say, walks into the classroom and clicks a picture and post about that in their social media. I think for me, like, it is important for individuals to understand that who matters to them, and then how can that person who them matters, they can appreciate the other person. I think that awareness has to really come, and then once that sort of mapping happens, that okay, for an individual who is the most responsible or who matters most to them, how can then we create a process towards that as well? And the process should not only be in terms of the outcome, but also sometimes in terms of efforts as well that people have put in. And I think a lot of times we only see hierarchical this thing, but I also see lateral motivation also is important. Like there are some cluster level meetings that happen, and BOHM meeting that happens on a monthly basis. How can we say that okay, can one of the teacher, and this is something that we have done, where one of the teachers can come and share how they have shaped certain things in their own classrooms, and that gives spark to other teachers. So just giving that space for them to come and speak about what they have been doing is a huge motivation. We found one of the student who is doing amazing work. And when she was speaking in front of a lot of students and parents, we ensured that how can we have her parents come and see, and just her parents coming and seeing that, oh my God, my student is speaking in front of so many people, is a huge motivation for the parents, saying, okay, I think something good is happening in this school. So I think understanding that these things do matter to these stakeholders, and that how do we then create spaces where these can be institutionalized, is something that I can think of as examples.
Yeah. Yeah, completely agreed. In some of the settings in pre-service contexts, when I've worked with teachers, I think one big motivator for them became just the fact that I went from being a woman to being recognized as a teacher in my community. So that very hyper local motivation that they got and respect. What I really liked about something that you said is actually it's about culture of motivation and not just these stopgap awards that we are talking about. We'll take the conversation to Pallavi. So far, we've discussed, Samyak brought forward the point of who is the implementer, and essentially it's the entire system. And he's broken down for us how district as a unit of change can actually implement a policy like NEP. Pallavi, since you've worked with very complex systems and more at national state levels as well, want to understand from you what it actually takes in terms of what key levers do we need to move at that level, and what have we been able to move with respect to NEP.
Thanks, Soumya, and thank you for the opportunity to speak here. Also to Samyak for all the inspiring work that you're doing at the most ground level and trying to create real change, which will last us for a long time. So, very, very inspiring to hear that. So Soumya, while you said that, I've had the opportunity to work at a large scale and, across complex topics. But honestly, I'm on this forum and been involved, in this topic only as a parent, because I truly, honestly feel that this is needed, and I have seen that in the limited journey that my 6-year-old has had at school, and even at this young age, she's had the privilege to have the ability to curate her own learning, have a bit more say around that, the kind of things that she's learning, and the decision making power that her school is providing her, and we are privileged to send her to a school like that. And I honestly feel that can every child in India get that experience? And so honestly, I'm here more as a parent and passionate about the topic, because I want to make sure everyone gets that kind of education than having worked. So I'm going to talk about very basic stuff. And, I mean, there are many more expert people on this panel and on this forum who are listening in. So by no means I'm trying to preach. I'm a converted, and hence, I'm trying to say how can we get more and more people like that, converted to this and start talking about it at the highest level. But coming back specifically to your question about what needs to be done from a structural perspective, I think let me just take the example first of drawing inspiration from some of the other countries and places where something like this has been implemented, and what did it take there. And one of the best examples that at least we've seen where student agency has worked really well is actually Finland. And how did they go about it? Actually, it's not very old. I mean, it's not like they started some 20 years ago. I mean, or Finland started this whole curriculum framework and change on self-regulation, learning, taking initiative explicitly tied to student learning outcomes only in about 2016. And that's where they gave a lot of choice in terms of subjects, the voice of the student, having student councils, minimal testing culture, but more based on feedback, portfolios, reflection, things like those, only in 2016. And they've really evolved on that, and even in the last whatever decade, they've been able to come a long way. Now, of course, that country is much smaller than ours, the complexity is much lower, it's an evolved society, but it's a very good parallel to draw from. And actually, they've conducted many studies as well, which shows that the high scores that they are now able to achieve, and how well their kids are doing as they graduate and get into the into the formal ecosystem shows a strong evidence of why this intrinsic lifelong learning orientation really helps. So there is proven at scale implementation which happens, and what does it take to make it happen? So I think the first thing that they did was they changed their whole ECE curriculum, which I think was the bedrock. ECE has some complicated full form. I'm not going to get into that, but it was their equivalent of the NEP framework, which formed the bedrock of saying that we want a rich early childhood education framework focused on learner identity, curiosity, contribution. And from there, they built the whole national curriculum into the K-12. So it was embedded right from day one. And then I think it's basically how they constructed it was that once you get to the secondary education is where the students were given more choice in terms of what subjects they could take. And that was not limited to saying that you have to stick to like these 5 options and you just have to kind of stick to that. So it was made a lot more multidisciplinary. And then it was enabled with a lot more digital data, portfolio, reflection, journals, so on and so forth. So the net message being that I think unless we start, and with NEP, we have a good starting position where the government, has recognized it and at least it's in the framework. But I think to take it forward, what we truly need is for, all 7 stakeholders to come together. And I will quickly cover those 7 stakeholders. I think Samya covered a lot of it in his, in his opening remarks. But I think at the highest level, it's the central government, and the norms get set there. So, all the school quality assessment accreditation framework and the National Achievement Survey, the portfolio, the academic bank of credit, Diksha, all of these like different instruments that we have, unless we are able to influence that at the highest level and get the changes incorporated there, it will not work. And it will also need interministerial coordination. It's not just the Ministry of Education. I think a lot more ministries of women and child, youth and skill development needs to come together for this to happen. So it's not going to be just influencing one ministry. It's a lot of this coming together. So I think that's point number 1. And if we can prove that with data, case studies, etc., I think that will only go that much forward with it. What we are also seeing at the highest level is there is a lot more openness to this, because AI is really going to change everything in the way we learn. I mean, the traditional frameworks, the way we kind of went about it is not going to work. So at least what I have picked up at the highest level is that there is more willingness to listen and to challenge the status quo because of the advent of AI. And in that context, this could also be a good way to kind of push this agenda forward, right? So that's one thing. The second is, of course, from there, it needs to go to the second stakeholder, which is the state governments, where the local policy translation happens. And Samyak spoke about it anyway, so I don't want to reiterate it. But, once it's agreed at that level, it then percolates down to the state. I think the other big influence that we need to make is actually to the educational boards. So to the CBSE, ICSE, state boards, etc., because that's where, like Finland, we need to revamp the entire curriculum and assessment. And so, education at that stage, data points at that stage, and, again, bringing in the concept of how AI is going to change learning, and hence why this is even more important in today's context, I think could go a long way as how we certify independent learners, and what are passion projects, what are logs, how do you build all of that into the assessment rather than just a very traditional way of assessment, which is what we've run for the last many decades. And after those 3 bodies, I think the next one, we covered the central government, state government, the educational boards. I think the next one is the teacher bodies, the unions, the training institutions, because of the shift in this whole pedagogical belief and rewarding questioning in class rather than reprimanding it. How do you build that into the whole framework? The peer mentorship that Involve has been propagating and trying to implement, I think that goes along with implementing and influencing all of those within the teacher bodies, unions, training institutions as to how newer teachers are coming up, I think again will play a big role. And then, I mean, there is the whole, fifth segment, which is the corporate CSR, all of that innovation resource funding. And I think what we could use them for is to prove that this works. So if we can take a few with these, funding pools available, if we could take a few public-private partnership places and just prove it, it is only then that we'll be able to scale it. So I think this funding may be best utilized if we are able to prove, because in the past also in India, when we've seen things scale up, it's been because someone's been able to take a concept, prove it at scale, and then we've kind of been able to take it at population scale. So I think, the passion and to prove this, I think, will be very critical. And hence the NGOs and society around this plays a big role to kind of make that happen. And last but not the least, it's people like me who are parents and, who should demand this, who should influence this, who, like me, who face this, who've experienced this and feel the good things out of it, should talk about it, and demand it from our schools, colleges, principals, so that they understand why and, that this is needed. And anyone who's in the place of influence, if they can, I mean, the only thing that's going viral these days and make something happen is, on social platforms. So the more we talk about it as parents, I think it will go a long way. So I think, all of these structural pieces needs to come together, and it's not going to be one silver bullet, but all of the structural pieces needs to come together, to make it happen.
Thank you so much, Pallavi. I think in the middle of it, I forgot that I have to moderate, and I was just listening in like a very nice student of public policy. Thank you so much. And I really love the way that you placed your role as a parent in context of your just role as a systemic actor. And I think we can use so much of our personal identity to inform what we do professionally. So thank you so much for bringing that. You also made a very important point, and I want to highlight that 100 times about early childhood education. I started my career in early childhood education, and I remember reading over there that, when a child is up till like many years, maybe 10 years, 12 years, or at least till 10 years, somebody else is making decisions about their life. What do you wear? What do you eat? When will you play? The entire schedule is made by somebody else. And just towards what Involve is doing in terms of creating autonomy, what you spoke about autonomy, it's so important, and it starts from the day to day at home and not just in school. So how do we create those choice points for our, they exist, but how do we not become barriers to them and sort of end the student autonomy, student voice? I think that's just so important. And I also actually would like you and Samyak to probably respond to this. Sometimes when we talk about autonomy, there might be, apprehension that certain people hold because our system has been a certain way. We are very telling kind of parents and very telling kind of educators. You do this, you don't do this, aise karo. So in that context, it's also very hard to sort of be okay with the idea of giving choice. And somebody might come and say, इतना सब नहीं decide करने दे सकते बच्चों को. They have to be told. They don't know. They're not adults right now. So how do we probably navigate some of those conversations about how much autonomy is good autonomy?
Yeah. Samyak, you want to go first?
No, I would love to hear first from you. As a parent, I would love to hear.
Yeah, so I'm telling you just from my personal experience, not that, I have any framework as, most consultants have to address this. I have not thought about it in a framework yet. I will and get back. But, I don't think, I think autonomy and choice is sometimes really misinterpreted. We are saying you need to have autonomy in certain aspects. It doesn't mean that, there are no guardrails, that there is no disciplining method, that there is no, framework within you, which you still need to operate. Choice just simply means that within that framework, you have a bit more flexibility than what exists today. That's how at least I look at it. So will disciplining be needed? Should children just be left on their own because they are still developing a mind? And especially if we start very early, I don't think we can just give them like a free playing field. But can there be given a bit more flexibility to say that, I want to pick up this choice of subjects because they still hang together, because they still make sense. Because in today's evolving world, there is no reason why I have to do PCM because I have to do PCM. I can do design with policy, and it comes together beautifully because we are designing policies. And if I have design thinking, I can design policies better. And that's not a normal choice that we offer today. So I'm saying that there is choice that needs to be offered still within things that hang together without making it a free playing field. And that balance is important. We'll have to experiment, learn. Maybe we'll get some things right and we won't get some things right. It's not a written playbook, but it's never going to be something that it's a free for all choice. It will still have guardrails, it will still have disciplining, it will still have, guidance that we need to give to the children. I think we have to think of it within that framework.
Yeah, just very quickly, I think very similar point to Pallavi. I think just being okay, I think as parent or as any individual, just giving that option, seeing if it works or if it doesn't work. If it doesn't work, change it. If it works, go ahead. I think just as simple as that. But I think we have to be more aware, more conscious that okay, we are doing this, and that let us see what is the consequence of that happens. If it works out well, amazing. Keep giving more and more. If it doesn't work, provide that support. I think this is what we do with our team as well. So I think because if we go from a fixed framework as Pallavi, there is no framework as such. Because if we go, then we will treat everyone as similar. So that's why I don't think that frameworks like this should exist even for that. And that okay, maybe broader some ideas should be there. But I think every parent, every individual should treat them as okay, let me try, being conscious of what we are trying and then seeing the effect of that is what I would see.
Yeah.
I think Meenakshi ma'am is also joined. I would love to hear from her as well.
Yes. Meenakshi ma'am, would you also like to respond how much autonomy is too much autonomy and what do we do with it?
See, I was actually, thank you first of all for having me here. I'm sorry I've had some technical issues. I think first I logged in, I was not able to speak. But yeah, I've been listening with rapt attention to Samyak and Pallavi, and I feel like a lot of the points that I meant to cover are here already, and maybe just said in different forms and different words. But I want to pick on something. I'm sorry I'm digressing from your question, but I'm going to pick on something that Pallavi said about design and about designing as a discipline, designing as something that students are allowed to do, design as something that, let's say, a district leader is allowed to do. But I think we have also to think about policy as design as a way of delivering policy right down to the last step. And that was one thing that a course that I really enjoyed in my most recent experience. For instance, we have this very fancy integrated solid waste management rules. What does it mean to the lady who comes to sweep my street? She doesn't give a hoot about integrated solid waste management rules. If she were to be empowered to reject the waste of somebody who gives her mixed waste despite being told 10 times, if she were, let's say, told that this is how you process green waste, this is how you take the wet waste, this is how you take the paper, and explained this is how you are an important part of the whole chain, then that is how policy gets delivered at the last mile. And then people understand what is going to be the outcome of this policy. Now, if we are going to design our education policy in a way that it makes the last mile, the teacher who's actually the interface with the child, fill up more forms, have to negotiate and navigate a complicated tab, which she's fundamentally not used to. At the end of her day, after class is done, she has 1 hour of filling forms. She's going to resent this change. So we're going to have to design our policy in a way that it lands easily on these people's desks and it makes them want to be a part of it. That is one thought I had. They gave us a wonderful example of one of the states in the US which designed a policy to make insurance more accessible for senior citizens. But the form that they had to fill online was the equivalent of 80 pages. And after 3 months, they wondered why only 5 people had signed it. So we have to think from that lens. How does this policy land on the table or at the doorstep of the person who's charged with implementing it at the last mile? This was one thought I had. The other thought I had was at the central, at all the leadership levels, I think the messaging is very important. Now, if we tell our teachers, you are now empowered to make sure this child learns well, but when the next election comes around, the school will become election booth and you will be put on election duty and you don't have the extra time to correct a child who's struggling. What are we telling them? That all this is expedient to a certain narrative. So I think the messaging, I really liked, for instance, the central government's Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao mission. It became like a buzzword, but I think part of it became embedded in people's minds. I really think it did a wonders for the gender ratio. But the padhao bit got lost a little bit. And also I think सिर्फ बेटी को क्यों पढ़ाओ, बेटे को भी पढ़ाओ, बेटा भी नहीं सीख रहा है कुछ, so I think it's important for us to think about the absolute relevance of messaging right from the very top. How do we take these as part of policy? How do we help the common person understand why it is important? For instance, I really like to say how FLN became a buzzword thanks to NEP 2020. But FLN alone is now not enough. Now I wish that the powers that we will make something else the buzzword. Like I think ECC is becoming the next buzzword. But it's a little bit gaadi ulti ja rahi hai na? We should have started in ECC, then FLN, then we should have said, okay, let's do middle school soft skills training, then we should do vocational. And the challenge in a country as complex and massive as India is that with every misstep, a few million children fall off the track. So we really need every kind of conscious thinking, every kind of inventive thought process that goes into it. And to that point, I think autonomy for teachers, in my mind, would be wonderful. For us to tell a teacher, Acha, these are the 1, 2, 3 parameters that we are looking at. These are what we want you to sort of achieve for your children. But if you find a way in which you can achieve this better, go ahead. Let's not penalize teachers for being inventive. Let's not penalize our teachers for trying to find solutions. Like, I think peer learning would be a wonderful example of that. If there was a teacher who felt that in her class, peer learning was working better and she was only focusing on those that needed her attention because the others were able to learn from the other friends, I think we would really improve the efficacy of our teachers. But to that, I think there is a mention of peer learning in the 2023 note, no, Samyak?
Yes, it is there in the.
So every one of those inventions, every one of those measures that help our teachers to get a little better and a little ahead, I think needs to be encouraged. And maybe the more we outline, the more we say, okay, yes, you can do this, yes, you can do this, the more we can probably empower our teachers. Because at the moment, I think the average school teacher in the villages, the average school teacher in the small towns is a little scared of the system, is a little scared of going out of the box, trying to do too many things that are not on her list on a daily basis. So that autonomy, I think, would be wonderful to give to a teacher.
Thank you so much, Meenakshi ma'am, for underscoring the part of user-centered design, essentially. And I think what you mentioned also about the way technology also can play a role. Plus, I think it also reminded me, I remember just we were trying to get teachers to use an app, and then we had just like an open forum for any questions that they would have, like a helpline. And we didn't have any complicated questions. They weren't able to log in because they didn't know what this underscore is. And we just need to be able to think with teachers, and we need them to be co-creators, and not just teachers, different actors in the system, because this is something that only a teacher could have told me, right? I couldn't have just thought about it. I come from a different context. So
Yep.
just really co-creating with the people and not acting on them. Yes. And I think you also, along with Pallavi and Samyak, all of you have mentioned the role of autonomy, both for students as well as for teachers. And I do see a question in the chat, which essentially saying how do we standardize teaching methodology? And I think it just gets answered with the idea of autonomy, that we don't need that level of standardization of the process so much, but really the outcomes, which takes us back to an earlier point that was made, that whatever we are assessing will get done. So how do we actually improve our assessments? How do we inform feedback? Thank you so much, everybody, for all your valuable points. I will just summarize it very quickly. Today, we've discussed around the design of the policy itself, how we need to cater to different contexts, how do we need to factor in motivation within the policy design, how do we make a culture of motivation, and most importantly, how do we create autonomy? I think autonomy is also a very big adult learning principle. And it's interesting that it only gets spoken, mostly gets spoken about in the context of adults, but involves work shows us that it's
Yes.
a lot more than that. Um, Second is around just assessment feedback, where we are saying we want to create loops at various levels. One is at just the level of what is working on the ground and how can it go back to the policy. How do we create proof points through works that NGO is doing, a different state is doing, a different district is doing, and how can funders sort of play a role in that, not just in providing the funding, but actually creating these proof points for things that can work at scale. And also underscoring just the importance of um, rethinking assessments, not just the paper and pen tests that we usually have. And one very big thing that came up was alignment at again different levels. How do we align ministries? How do we align the different actors who will be in the system for your teachers, your BEOs? And we had different points. You can have letters, you can have webinars, you can have different messaging like the Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, like a campaigning sort of a thing. Um, and our entire hope is that we go beyond FLN. We understand the spirit of NEP and we try to implement that from the pre-primary and onward and upward from there. Thank you so much again, everyone. It was a very energizing conversation for me as well. And I will hand it back to the involved team.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much.
Thank you, Pallavi. Thank you, Soumya. Thank you, Meenakshi, ma'am, for
Not at all. Why
amazing.
Meenakshi alone become ma'am?
Pleasure.
Be Meenakshi.
I think it will take time. I'll try. But thank you so much. Thank you so much for this wonderful person. Bye bye. Bye bye. I think we'll move to the next segment. I think I think we were hoping Rajendra Paisia sir, who is the district magistrate of Sambhal, to be there, but I think we have not been able to right now get him. But we have, I think, Avnish sir, Professor Avnish. Thank you so much for being here, sir. I'm a huge fan of MDI Gurgaon. Whenever in college IIT, we used to think that okay, a lot of people did want to go over there, and I'm very fortunate, very happy to sort of meet you. I think first time I would love to meet you in person as well sometime soon. But yeah, I think thank you so much for a very brief introduction. I think I got a very long introduction about you. So
I think my introduction is not so important. I mean, like, let's get started. So, thank you so much. I would love to meet you and welcome you in MDI. Please do come over.
Yes,
it would be a pleasure and pride.
Thank you so much, sir. And I would also invite Pratibha, who is my co-founder at Involve.
Thank you,
who leads multiple initiatives over here, and to take it over. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Samyak. Hi, sir. Very excited to have you. We were very thrilled when you accepted this invite, and we were, of course, hoping that DM sir would join us for this conversation and we could really deep dive into explorations of policy and its implementation. But happy to also hear a lot more from you now that we have the chance and spend more time understanding perspectives. I was reading a little bit about your work earlier, and the analysis of the NEP that you had recently written, I think a couple of years ago, that you had written about the policy and what it means. And I think more focus was on, of course, the higher education context. But would love to just hear opening thoughts about the policy in terms of how it has shifted from the first education policy that India had in about the 86-91 policy to the 2020 policy. What are some big changes that you have observed, and how are they aligned to nation building per se in terms of the evolution of India as a nation, and how has the policy evolved in accordance with that demand? If you can just, we can start off on that and then we'll dive deeper into the implementation of the policy.
Thank you, Dr. Pratibha, and thank you so much. I feel a lot of sense of pride because I think the kind of work which you people are doing is of immense value. As you said, that if you look at the history of policy making, NEP was very distinctive in, I would say, in two senses. Just to start for the audience, almost 34 years ago in 1986, as you rightly said, we had a policy of education. But unfortunately, literally, and it's not about semantics, it's all about how do you pitch for the policy as a policy objective. I think my personal understanding is, with my limited whatever policy analysis skills I have, I think previous policies were focusing not on education, they were focusing on literacy. What do I mean by that is basically 10th pass kar gaya, 12th pass kar gaya, PhD kar liya. Just to give you an example, if that was the case, then Rabindranath Tagore never went to school, but he got the Nobel. So the distinction which I would say in NEP is focusing on the purposive value which education creates. And I was listening to the previous speakers. And if you look at, of course, you may say that now the shift due to credit framework has gone into early child care. But there is a term which is being used there, and that is called panchada. Basically, what they are saying is that learning has 5 steps. And they are saying that the first step is that as a student, even today, what we do is basically we try to observe. Now, when we observe something, there is a sense of learning which starts. It's an initiation. Now, what they say is once you observe anything, you start imitating. Now, once you start imitating, then there is a nature of practice which is to be brought in. Now, the more you practice, like to make it simple for all of us, let's say ICER is doing a study and assessment about mathematical skills. And there is a recent study which Abhijit Banerjee, the Nobel laureate, is doing, where he's trying to compare the mathematical skills of child who is there serving in the shops, which are like street shops, vis-a-vis the so-called elite students in the elite schools. And he says, the study finding says, the more they are able to visualize that aloo kitne rupe kilo hai, bangan kitne hai, so that is how mathematical order of skills build. Now, when practice is taken further, then what you look at is practice leads to adoption. Now, then you adopt something, and then finally the role of education begins is transmission. That how do we transmit our knowledge for the purposive value for the others? So that's how the CCE is all about childcare, which is looking at. The second distinctive thing, I would say, it has never happened in the history of policy making in India, be it independent India or if you look at the British government also, and never in the world also, I can guarantee for that. Now, the kind of consultation NEP has gone. The NEP has gone into consultation into approximately 2.5 lakhs Gram Panchayat, around 6,600 the blocks, and similarly ULBs is 6,000, and there are approximately considered to be 2.4 lakhs of suggestions. So it's a very participatory way of making it. Now, the third thing which I think NEP which has brought in, we have always seen primary education, secondary education, tertiary education, higher education. But to look at holistically, that you draw how child will grow is something which is very interesting in NEP. One thing, fourth and last, which I'll conclude, on this question. See, NEP, what it has done is literally, it has shifted the control from the institution to the students. With the credit bank systems in higher education, now I cannot restrict any student to be in MDI. If they want to, he or she, they can join any other college. Now, that is the so-called, I would say, freedom and choice the students have got through the NEP. And of course, there are challenges which I was listening to other previous panelists, which are relevant. But you know the kind of inequality which exists in India, so that will take time. So I think those are some fundamental, which is shift from the previous policy. We are approximately coming to 39 years today after 1986. So there should be something which is very disruptive to make certain changes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for actually highlighting these four big nuances of the policy that have sort of changed in the way it's looking at learning, in the way it's looking at consultation, in the way it's looking at the shift of power from institution to student. And I'll come to that in a bit, but I wanted to actually touch upon a little bit of what you said about the policy being very participatory in its way of development. So you mentioned how it went through multiple consultation. There was a lot of feedback that was taken. It went through consultation across many actors as well in the sector, not just the government or the public, but even the CSO and many other sectors. What do you make of this participatory approach now for the implementation of the policy? While drafting, it was done in a participatory manner, but while it's being implemented, what now or what roles do you see all of these different actors, the community, the government, the CSO sector, all of these actors play in actually getting this policy on ground? Because while in the document, it's a really beautifully articulated policy and really future looking, in fact, the challenge, like you said, the complexity of India's inequality, the complexity of its demographic makes it very hard to see this alive in classrooms. So what kind of participation would be required of different actors for that to happen? If you could bring some light onto that.
So let's say we were focusing also with this session with the district magistrate of Sambal. Yeah.
Yes.
And if you look at even UP data, to respond to your question, as the stage and age of child grows, increases, like from the primary to the 10th, 11th, the percentage of students enrolled in private schools are increasing drastically. It goes, I mean, like it's much above 50%. So it's not like 1:1. Now, one thing is that how do we promote partnership between private? And I'm not making an argument for the business entity of private, but basically like Involve and others who are into education and doing fantastic jobs. So one of the challenges, how government can partner and promote such institutions and organizations. Now, let me just give you one understanding which I did, another, not in the context of education, but when partnership flourish, and this was also published in Economic and Political Weekly. The learning of partnership which I have is that what I titled is like, if you have an understanding of mutual strain. Now, government has to understand that they cannot actually achieve the NEP objective without the partnership of Involve and other related organizations who are working in this. Now, the second factor is that mutual strain is just the beginning. The second part is, what is the equitable gain? Because at the end of the day, running an education institution like a school, especially for the marginalized and socioeconomically backward communities. Now, if you are getting into that, now you can't make a good business proposal. And how do you have a resource to run that organization? Because you have an aspiration to give the world-class amenities and knowledge. Now, this is something, a big challenge which I see for organizations who are sincerely into this. One of the factor in education, other than the other sectors are, like if you compare other sectors, is that the gestational period of impact of realization of education is too long. Now, parents only realize that when they send to one school, they are doing well. Like, let's say between both of us and the rest of six participants who are here today, if one thing is common among all of us, it's just because our parents and we had an opportunity of education. There's nothing big about our cranial capacity. It's just an opportunity which gave us a position to be here. So I think one is partnership with the good organizations and who are using innovative pedagogy, who are using something which is very innovative, interesting. I think this is the first thing which I believe is that how government can build partnership, which is based on due acknowledgement. Sometimes I feel that some of the organizations which are doing fantastic work are not acknowledged. Now, if I personally, because when I got started my career, I was working with development sector. I think most of the people who work in development sector is because of the purposive value. They want to engage with certain purpose they want to achieve. So they need to be recognized. And I'm not saying undue acknowledgement, but should be some form of which will lead to the second challenge which I see is, which is also related to it, is how do you build infrastructure and facilities? Because this is a technology led, because if you also see data, even in any states, if you can count, almost 70 to 80% of the students, their families have smartphones. Now, how to bridge the gap of quality teachers? There could be some innovative ways of looking at it. Of course, there is no way you can replace physical classroom with virtual classrooms unless until we have optic fibers which makes a dialogue like this, which we are having it. Till then, at least you need to build the capability of the teachers also. Because at the end of the day, if you recall any subject which you are good at and which you pursued, largely because you had a fortune to have a good teacher in your school, that actually drives your mind, because you like mathematics because you had a good math teacher who was teaching you mathematics. Sometimes you hate chemistry because you didn't get a good teacher who was. So what I'm trying to say is that, the second challenge would be how to create a good corpus of motivated teacher. And that's a big challenge. I tell you why. We often give the example of Sweden, Finland, and other countries. But how teachers are recognized in India? They have to be recognized in terms of what they do and provide certain kinds of value to the society. So I'm not saying only in terms of salaries, but also in terms of respect. So school, and especially school teacher I'm talking about. When you look at this, then how you go further about examination? Because then, many times we fall short because we get into that how examination can actually lead to assessment. And what has happened is that when we were child, there was only one source of knowledge. That was teacher and books. Now the child has multiple sources of knowledge, be it mobile, be it laptop, computer, or maybe other sources of knowledge as well. Now, in this case, the role of the teacher becomes very different. Now, what I'm going to come to is like what NEP is also talking about. How do you build the cognitive, not biological, and also the socio-emotional competencies among the students? And, I often say this, and when I was asked to come on this panel, I was reading and I was asking that why Saraswati has 4 instruments in her hand. If you look at Saraswati, whom we call as Vidya Vahini, she has an instrument that indicates the role of music in education. She has if you look at a book, which means that there is a source of knowledge. She also has a mala in one of her hand. I think if you look at the data of rising mental health challenges among the kids, largely because of the breakdown of neighborhood families, now these challenges are coming to teachers. Now, teachers are not God. I mean, of course they are God, but how do they cope up with such kind of multiple demands? So when I was saying Saraswati, there's a pot also which is all about purity and so value. So what I'm saying is, when you're looking at holistic education, then examination is something which becomes very tricky, because that leads to how do I give due acknowledgement to a student. My father was also a professor, and when I entered into academics, he said only one thing, because though you may not know, many others don't know, that in my family, all three brothers and all three wives, their wives are also teaching. So he said one thing to do always, that always remember that make a distinction that who's the best and who is not. So that is the challenge, that how do you provide a good acknowledgement to the student who has given his or her best. In this whole game of value-based education, so examination becomes very tough. And that is something, do we promote innovative answers? Do we promote mathematical answers like stereotype, a moron parrot like coming up with? So those are some of the issues which I thought I'll share with you, that how this can be built upon it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing this. In fact, I've been taking this course on public policy and education for the future, and this seems like a masterclass on both right now. I think what you mentioned about how the partnership requires these two things, the mutual strain and equitable gain. I think just that brings so much clarity to how a partnership, even as Involve or as any organization, what is the type of partnership we should actually envision with a government or with anyone else for that matter. I think these two are such critical levers for good partnering. And I also, of course, completely resonate with everything you spoke about the nature of education itself, and therefore how we design examination for that kind of education. I mean, we commonly use that phrase of what gets measured gets done. And if we only measure one type of competency, then we are ignoring so much of what else the child is learning or absorbing. And bringing back to also what you said initially about the stages of learning, the whole observe, imitate, practice, we're not recognizing a lot of the senses that the child is actually engaging when they're learning in the examination process. We're only examining one of his or her senses, I think. So thank you so much for capturing that so beautifully. Because we are short of time, but because this conversation is so exciting, I still want to ask one more question to sort of close the loop on this. When we work with governments and when we work, because we realize that ultimately education in India has to be solved via the government and has to be solved through the government. When we partner with governments, of course, there is, like you said, the building of strong teachers, the building of strong administrative cadres becomes extremely critical. And there is, of course, a lot of changes in the government machinery very constantly. There is administrators get changed, and each of them come with different belief systems and so on. So when we look at these two features of mutual strain and equitable gain, how do we see this in a very, very dynamic system of India's government structure, which keeps changing or which, people keep moving around? How do these two, how do we maintain both of these across a structure like India?
So I think, what you have said is a very typical problem of, government. And I think when any good work to influence policies becomes very fragile because of this transfer and inconsistency of the officers and their differences of opinion. Now, I think the only thing which works is how good you are in evidence capture. Because, evidence-based, any kind of differences or is, you may accept or reject, but you cannot ignore. There is a difference between, the worst thing which any good organization like Involve will face is when they are ignored. So what is important? You may reject. I mean, you can say that this argument is not valid and this is what you do. But what happens is that if you look at any government officer, at the end of the day, as I understand here, performance is very critical for them. And data capture is gone are those days. Now it is real-time basis data. So if we are doing good job, see at the what they are looking. Well, I'll be very upfront on this. I think no leader takes a decision if he or she don't see it that it elevates their position. Now, do our case leads to make his or her case better from where they have to represent and report. That is one thing. The second thing, let me tell you, Dr. Pratibha, I may be wrong because I don't work very closely now with NGOs, which I used to do 20 years ago. But with data and understanding which I have, partnership with the government and NGO is one thing. But even partnering with NGOs is a very big challenge. I don't know any NGOs which are coming together as a good partnership network, exchanging knowledge and building upon it. So one of the challenges, so partnership at both ends, I would say horizontal and vertical, both are very critical, along with the partnership with the parents and students, and that is something. So in order to influence, I think, plural of anecdotes does not make any change. If I come and tell you that I'm very good, I teach this way, that way, you will say, okay, good, thank you so much. And then things will be lost and the story will be closed. One thing which I believe is very critical, how do we map it? And if we go through a very rigorous way of mapping, then I am sure that irrespective of who is the person and whatever he or she believes in, it's very difficult to ignore. That is, and frankly speaking, I just did a study for the government, which was released by the minister only. This is on CP gram. This is on grievance. Now, what I'm going to tell you is that data measurement of every district, every block, every village is like real time, and government is taking a decision and observing it. So for every administrator also, it's equally important to perform. Suppose my district literacy rate is low and dropout is high, and then it's a big challenge for the district collector as well. So I think, how do we enable the system through our work and also with it? I believe that sometimes development sector lose their actually capabilities of influence, largely because that data capture is not so good.
Perfect. I think really resonate with this idea that if we are to sustain long term in the system, and that our ability to influence truly relies on our ability to generate strong, solid evidence, have real time data, and use that to inform the work that we do. And I really like the statement about you can accept or reject, but don't get ignored is the motto for us. But thank you so much, Professor, for taking the time. I'm still hoping we will have another day where we're going to get you in conversation with DM sir.
Please do come. Please do also, you two also come.
We will also, yes, love to have a longer conversation around policy with you. But thank you so much for taking your time this evening. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shall we close it now? Can I leave now?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you so much, everyone who joined in, who are still listening in. Thank you so much for taking the time, and huge thank you to every one of our speakers who joined in, who were able to present. I know one of our students wasn't able to present, but hopefully we'll take some time and have her present to you very soon as well. But for the rest of the speakers, the panelists, the conversations were so enriching, and I hope that the audience had a lot of takeaways. And just building off on, just to close out this extremely insightful space, building off on what Professor was talking about, that partnerships are the most critical asset for us to solve today's problems in India. And one of the, like he said, that there is seldom very strong partnerships that exist within the ecosystem with the government that can enable true knowledge sharing, resource sharing, abilities to create opportunities to collaborate, and so on. And towards that, a small initiative that we at Involve are bringing to everyone is to bring together a collective movement of organizations, of individuals, of people who truly believe in the idea that students should be at the center of learning, that students should have a sense of agency, and they should be in the forefront of decision making about learning. And like Professor beautifully put it as well, that the power should shift from institutions to the child. And what are the spaces that we as a whole collective movement can enable to do that. And towards this, Involve is launching a very small at this point, but hopefully larger in the future initiative called the Agency Collective. It is a movement of organizations who are working on building student agency to create shared resources, shared communities of practice, make sure that every child in India and across the world experiences agency and therefore leads a thriving life. We would really invite organizations, individuals, anyone who's on this conversation, who believes in this idea to reach out, join us in this movement. And we hope that we can really extend the beliefs that the policy talks about to every classroom in this country. And again, with that, thanking every single one of you who has joined this conversation, who has been here till the very end, and all the speakers for taking the time. A very happy 5-year NEP anniversary to everyone. Thank you so much for joining in.